Ventaxian Commander Linux mercilessly blasted apart human archaeologist Dennis Gray's dog Max in cold blood, laughing at the human's anguished screams. Dennis Gray was excavating a mysterious Prothean ruins site on Kepler 22b when the attack came without warning. Ventaxian pulse rifles flashed. His colleagues' dead bodies thudded to the ancient stone floor. An energy blast sizzled past, barely missing him. Dennis snatched the strange artifact he had just uncovered and sprinted for his ship, dodging more streaking plasma bolts. His fingers shook as he fired the engines, Ventaxian attack craft soaring after him, weapons blazing. This was the last straw. For decades, the cruel Ventaxian Empire had raided defenseless human colonies, slaughtering and enslaving at will. Now they had killed Dennis's dog. Humans were done being prey. This ancient Prothean data device Dennis had recovered would finally let humanity fight back. He punched in Earth's coordinates, vowing to see the alien monsters burn for what they had done. Dennis would deliver the blueprints to the Prothean doomsday warship, and humanity would make the Ventaxians pay. Linux watched the human ship streak away, mandibles clicking with amusement. The human had spirit. Good. Linux looked forward to slowly crushing it as he hunted down this Dennis Gray and seized that Prothean device. If the humans wanted a fight, Linux would bring them a war. The Ventaxian fleet would crush humanity's pathetic defiance and secure Ventaxian dominance over the galaxy once and for all. Linux would see to it personally. Dennis punched in override codes, his ship screaming into Earth's atmosphere. He had to get this Prothean data device to Admiral Simmons. It was humanity's only hope. His comm crackled to life. "Dennis? Is that you? What the hell is going on?" "Jack, it's the Ventaxians. They attacked us on Kepler 22b, killed my whole team. I've got Prothean tech that could let us fight back, but that bastard Linux is hunting me." "Roger that. Sending coordinates to a classified R&D base. Get that device here, Stat, and we'll—" A thunderous boom cut the Admiral off. Dennis looked up to see Ventaxian dropships descending on New York, disgorging soldiers. Linux was already here. The alien's guttural voice blasted over the comms. "Did you really think you could run, human? I will burn your cities and take what is mine." Dennis set his ship down hard, sprinting through the chaos with Max at his heels. Ventaxian troops opened fire, forcing them to take cover in the rubble of a collapsed skyscraper. Dennis returned fire, downing 2, but dozens more kept coming, Linux at their head. "You're mine, human!" Max lunged, ripping out a Ventaxian trooper's throat. Dennis dropped 3 more with precise headshots, but it wasn't enough. A plasma bolt clipped his shoulder, sending him sprawling. His guns skittered away. Linux loomed over him, rifle aimed. "Your species will be crushed." With a roar, Max leapt, fangs clamping on the Ventaxian's gun arm. Linux staggered back, giving Dennis an opening. He scooped up his pistol and ran, the data device clutched tight. Behind him, a plasma rifle barked once, a pained yelp. Dennis's heart clenched. "Max!" He risked a glance back to see his brave Neo-Mastiff lying still, Linux standing over him. Grief and rage warred in Dennis's heart, but he had no choice. He had to go. Earth needed him. Humanity needed him. Dennis wouldn't let Max's sacrifice be in vain. He would see the ESS Retribution completed, no matter what it took, and then Linux and his Ventaxian butchers would pay for everything they'd done. Dennis would make sure of it. Weeks passed, as Dennis threw himself into the ESS Retribution's construction, working alongside Earth's top engineers and scientists. The Prothean blueprints were complex, but slowly the immense warship took shape in the secret underground shipyard. Sleek, dark metal bristling with advanced weaponry. A vessel to make the Ventaxians tremble. Then the intel came in. Linux had taken Max's body, transporting it back to the Ventaxian homeworld of Ventax Prime as some sick trophy. The bastard. Dennis stormed into Admiral Simmons's office, slamming his fist on the desk. "We have to hit them now, Jack, hard and fast, right in their own backyard. I need to get Max back." Simmons leaned back, steepling his fingers. "It's risky, Dennis. We'd be taking the fight to the heart of their empire. Are you sure the retribution is ready? She's ready, and so am I. I've trained night and day to master every weapon and system on that ship. Give me your best troops, and I'll shove a nuke up the Ventaxian Emperor's scaly ass myself. All right, you've got the green light. Bring our boy home, Dennis, and give that fucker Linux a few plasma bolts from me. The ESS Retribution, a gleaming spear of human defiance, launched within the hour, racing across the stars towards Ventax Prime. Dennis stood on the bridge in his new captain's uniform, watching the swirling energies of FTL on the viewscreen. Hold on, Max, I'm coming. Proximity alarms blared as they dropped out of FTL on the outskirts of the Ventax system. The Ventaxian fleet hung in space before them, a swarm of jagged alien ships poised to strike. And at their center, Linux's flagship, the VNS Deathbringer. All hands, battle stations, Dennis barked. The Retribution's crew, the best the UNSF had to offer, raced to their posts. Charge forward plasma cannons. Arm the photon torpedoes. Let's show these alien bastards what humans can do. The ESS Retribution surged forward, her powerful engines flaring. The Ventaxian ships opened fire, a storm of sizzling energy bolts, but the human dreadnought's Prothean shields held firm. The Retribution's guns spoke then, lances of plasma burning through the void, to tear Ventaxian ships apart in gouts of flame. Dennis gripped the arms of the captain's chair as the deck shuddered beneath him. Keep firing, concentrate on the Deathbringer. The Retribution danced through the Ventaxian formation, Dennis's honed reflexes guiding the ship in evasive maneuvers that should have been impossible for a vessel of its size. The Ventaxian weapons glanced off the Retribution's shields as its own guns savaged their fleet. Burning Ventaxian cruisers tumbled in the Retribution's wake. "Sir, I have a lock on the Deathbringer," Ensign Michaels called from the gunnery station. "Fire torpedoes." Their salvo of glowing torpedoes leapt from the Retribution's forward tubes, slamming into the Ventaxian flagship's flank. The Deathbringer lurched, explosions marring its hull, but Linux's ship stubbornly stayed intact. "Their flagship is still operational but badly damaged," Michaels reported. "The rest of the Ventaxian fleet is in full retreat." "Good. It's time we paid Linux a visit," Dennis growled. "Prep my strike team for ground assault. We're going to get Max back and plant our flag right in the Ventaxian's scaly hide." A squad of Force Recon Marines met Dennis in the hangar bay, bristling with weapons and grim purpose. Dennis shouldered his own pulse rifle, the one Max used to love fetching for him during their hunts in the forests of Kepler 22b. He'd use it to put some rounds through Ventaxian skulls for Max. Linux would regret ever laying a hand on his dog. The hangar doors yawned open, revealing the ruddy surface of Ventax Prime below, its cities glinting beneath roiling clouds. Dennis and his Marines piled into the drop shuttle, engines howling as they plummeted through the atmosphere. The shuttle touched down in the war-torn streets of the Ventaxian capital, pulse rifle fire and the screams of dying soldiers filling the air. Dennis kicked the hatch open, storming out into the fray, his Marines fanning out behind him. "All right, Marines, our target is the Citadel. Let's move." Dennis barked over the whine of plasma bolts. Intel had placed Max's body in the Ventaxian Emperor's stronghold at the heart of the city, where Linux would surely be holed up. Ventaxian soldiers swarmed to block their path. Dennis cut two down in a hail of pulse rounds, dropping into a combat role to dodge return fire. His Marines advanced with textbook precision, leapfrogging forward and laying down covering fire. Alien bodies piled in the dust. A Marine cried out, toppling from a plasma bolt to the chest. Dennis put a round through his attacker's eye. There was no time to mourn. They had to keep pushing forward. Block by block they advanced through the shattered city, Ventaxian resistance intensifying with each step. Dennis led the charge, pulse rifle barking, alien blood splattering his uniform. His muscles burned, his lungs ached, but all he could see was Max. His best friend gutted and strung up like a piece of meat by that Ventaxian scum. The rage drove Dennis on. Nothing would stop him. Not even as a plasma bolt seared across his ribs, drawing a hiss of pain. He returned fire on the run, diving into an alleyway for a moment's respite. The citadel loomed ahead, Ventaxian banners flapping from its onyx walls. So close, Linux was in there, with Max. "On me, Marines," Dennis roared, pulse rifle blazing as he stormed out of cover. "We're taking that citadel for Max, for Earth." The Marines let out a battle cry and charged after him, a tidal wave of human fury crashing against the citadel's defenses. Ventaxian troops fell before them. Then they were through, stacking up against the stronghold's immense blast doors. An engineer rushed up, fixing breaching charges to the reinforced metal. "Fire in the hole!" The charges thundered, the doors buckling and blowing inward. Dennis was first through the breach, pulse rifle up and searching for targets in the smoke and flames. A flicker of movement. Dennis spun, finding himself face to face with Linux. The Ventaxian commander stood over a metal table. Max's lifeless body lay atop it. Linux's mandibles twisted in a cruel approximation of a smile. "You're too late, human. Just in time to watch your precious Earth burn." The Ventaxian's clawed hand came up, a detonator clutched in his grasp. Dennis saw the flashing lights and tangle of wires rigging Max's corpse. A trap, and he'd walked right into it. Linux's thumb descended towards the detonator's trigger. Dennis lunged, a wordless cry of rage and anguish on his lips. The Ventaxian's claw stabbed down. The world vanished in a maelstrom of fire and shrieking metal. Dennis clawed his way out of the shattered rubble, his body battered and bleeding. Thick smoke stung his eyes. Ringing ears muffled the distant crackle of gunfire. He stumbled forward, Max's limp body clutched tight to his chest. "Captain, this way!" Sergeant Briggs appeared through the haze, pulse rifle snapping off shots at unseen enemies. Dennis staggered after Briggs, his Marines falling in around him. Plasma bolts sizzled past as they dashed through the ruins. A charred Ventaxian corpse crunched under Dennis's boot. He didn't slow down. The Marines fought their way back to the extraction point, a blood-soaked inch-by-inch battle through the heart of the enemy capital. Dennis's arms ached from the weight of Max's body. His vision swam, but he pushed on. At last, the bulbous form of their dropship resolved through the smoke. Engines roaring, ramp lowered, beckoning them in. Dennis and his men lunged aboard, pulse fire peppering their heels. The ramp snapped shut. The ship clawed for the skies of Ventax Prime. In the dropship's hold, Dennis collapsed to the deck, Max still cradled in his arms. The dog's dark fur was matted with blood, his body unnaturally still. Briggs crouched beside Dennis, face grim. "I'm sorry, Captain, but we need to get you to the medbay. You're wounded." "No." Dennis forced himself to his feet, swaying slightly. "Get me to the bridge, now." By the time Dennis limped onto the Retribution's bridge, his uniform was dark with blood, some of it his, most of it not. Max's body had been gently lain in the captain's quarters, waiting. The bridge was controlled chaos. Officers hunched over hollow displays tracking the flow of the battle above Ventax Prime. Dennis drew himself up, ignoring the concerned looks from his crew. "Status report," he barked. Lieutenant Chen straightened from the sensor station. "Orbital superiority secured, Captain. The remaining Ventaxian ships are in full retreat. We are victorious." Dennis allowed himself a small, pained smile. Earth was safe. Humanity would endure. But it wasn't over. Not yet. "Sir, we're picking up a small craft launching from the Citadel," Chen reported, her brow furrowed. "It's Linux's personal ship. Tracking shows he's heading for the Kuiper Belt." "The bastard's running," Dennis growled. "Helm, set pursuit course, full burn." Concerned murmurs rippled through the bridge. Navigation spoke up, his voice hesitant. "Captain, with respect, the Retribution has taken heavy damage. She needs repairs, and you need medical attention." Dennis cut him off with a slashing gesture, his eyes hard as flint. "I gave you an order, Ensign. Linux doesn't get to slink away after what he's done. We finish this. Now." The Retribution shuddered as her engines roared to life. The battered dreadnought peeling away from Ventax Prime's orbit on a plume of blue-white fusion fire. On the bridge view screen, the massive curve of the gas giant soon gave way to the star-flecked void of deep space, and to a distant shimmering haze on the edge of visibility, the Kuiper Belt, Linux's last desperate refuge. As the Retribution plunged headlong into that treacherous expanse of tumbling ice and rock, proximity alarms began to shrill in warning. Asteroids large and small pinged off the warship's Prothean barriers. But it was the barrage of plasma that made the bridge crew flinch. Searing energy bolts slammed into the Retribution's flanks, sending tremors through the deck plates. On the view screen, a small angular shape flitted between the tumbling asteroids, Linux's attack craft using the celestial debris as cover for his ambush. Damage reports flooded in as the Ventaxian captain danced and weaved, pummeling the larger human ship with impunity. Armor fractured, weapon systems overloaded, atmosphere vented from breached compartments, the screams of Dennis's crew abruptly silenced by the merciless vacuum. Dennis's hands clenched on the arms of the captain's chair, his blood boiling. "Singularity cannon status," he roared over the chaos. "Cannon primed and ready, sir," came the strained reply. "But, Captain, at this range firing it could destabilize the entire asteroid belt." "I won't let that Ventaxian filth escape," Dennis snarled, his eyes locked on Linux's twisting ship. "Fire the cannon. Flush that bastard out now." The crew obeyed. The Retribution shuddered as the massive Prothean weapon unfolded from her prow, eldritch energies gathering at its heart. With a blinding flash, a roiling beam of unstable dark matter erupted from the cannon, screaming into the heart of the Kuiper Belt. Asteroids shattered and vaporized as the Singularity cannon's shot plowed through the field, the beam's passage ripping open a swirling vortex of tortured space-time, a newborn black hole, hungrily dragging in everything around it, including Linux's ship. The Ventaxian craft reeled, alarms shrieking as the Singularity seized it in an inescapable gravitational fist. Asteroids pummeled its hull as it was dragged forward. "We've got him!" Dennis crowed, savage joy surging in his veins. "All weapons open!" A blinding light flared from the stricken Ventaxian ship, then another, and another. Linux's craft was shaking itself apart, detonations consuming its hull in a chain reaction of self-immolation. "Captain, massive energy surge from the enemy ship," Chen cried. "It's a self-destruct sequence." "Helm evasive maneuvers!" Dennis started to bellow, but there was no time. No time to run, no time to escape the cataclysmic blast he could see building within the bones of Linux's disintegrating ship. No time for anything but the cold equations of war. "All hands abandon ship," Dennis roared, his hand slamming down on the ship-wide intercom. "Get to the escape pods now. Set the Retribution on a collision course, ramming speed." Klaxons blared as the crew scrambled to obey, racing to abandon their posts. Only Dennis remained on the bridge, his hands flying over the helm controls. The Retribution groaned as he wrenched the ship into a steep dive, lining up the prow with the seething heart of Linux's dying ship. On the view screen, escape pods streaked away into the void, ferrying his crew to safety. But Dennis had no intention of joining them. He would see this through to the end. For Earth. For Max. Time slowed to a crawl as Dennis wrenched the Retribution's controls, aligning the warship's prow with Linux's disintegrating ship. Debris pummeled the hull. Sirens wailed. Somewhere deep within the ship, metal screamed and tore. But all Dennis could see was his enemy framed in the center of the view screen. Linux would not escape. Not this time. The Ventaxian ship loomed larger, wreathed in seething energies as its reactor tore itself apart. Dennis's hand tightened on the throttle, the Retribution's engines howling as he urged every last drop of speed from them, just a little further. A thunderous impact slammed Dennis from his chair, the ship bucking like a wounded animal. He hit the deck hard, pain lancing through his battered body. Emergency lights strobed, painting the bridge in hellish red. The view screen flared white. Linux's ship vanished in a sun-bright detonation, a ravenous sphere of light and fury expanding to fill the screen. The Retribution screamed as the blast wave hit, the entire ship shuddering. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks. Crewmen cried out in terror. Girders buckled overhead with tortured groans. A cacophony of rending metal and rushing air. The hull had breached. Dennis dragged himself to the shattered remains of the viewscreen, transfixed by the sight beyond. The Retribution was coming apart, torn to pieces by the apocalyptic forces unleashed in the heart of the Kuiper Belt. Flames gouted from fissures in the hull, snuffed to vapor an instant later by the voracious pull of vacuum. Debris spun away into the void. Dennis's ship was dying, and so was he. His ragged breaths tore at his lungs, the air already turning thin. Darkness crept at the edges of his vision. It would be so easy to let go, to let oblivion take him, to rest. No, not yet. He forced his leaden limbs to obey, staggering towards the bridge elevator. One hand still clutched the scorched bundle of fur that had once been his closest friend. He would not abandon Max. Not again. The lift doors screeched open, revealing a scene of utter chaos. Crew members raced through the shuddering corridors, desperately trying to reach escape pods before the ship's death throes consumed them all. Dennis shouldered through the press of bodies, driven by sheer force of will. He stumbled into the nearest pod, just as the Retribution gave a final shuddering groan. The pod's hatch slammed shut, Dennis collapsing to the deck in a clatter of armor. Shaking fingers fumbled at the pod's control panel. He had to launch, had to get clear before... A bone-jarring concussion, deeper and more violent than anything that had come before. The Retribution's reactor had just gone critical. The ship was now a rapidly expanding ball of plasma, and the tiny pod was caught in its wake. Searing light spilled through the viewport, the brilliance of the Retribution's death throes drowning out the stars themselves. Shrapnel pinged off the pod's armored skin as it tumbled away, the shockwave propelling it clear of the maelstrom that had once been Dennis's command. Behind him, the remnants of Linux's ship and the Retribution mingled, two mortal enemies united in oblivion. Fire and wreckage burned in the void, a funeral pyre light years wide. The war that had consumed Dennis's life ended here, in this remote corner of space. But the cost... Numb, Dennis cradled Max's body as the escape pod carried them away from the battlefield, away from everything he had ever known. Darkness crept in, exhaustion and pain dragging him down into a dreamless abyss. He drifted, lost in a void deeper than space itself. Time lost all meaning in that black gulf, seconds stretching into eons. When awareness finally returned, it brought only confusion and a throbbing ache that suffused his entire being. Light wormed its way past his eyelids, stinging and harsh. A low hum vibrated in his bones. Sensation flooded back, the rasping drag of air in his lungs, the stiff press of a mattress against his back, the cool kiss of recycled atmosphere on his skin. Sir Dennis forced leaden eyelids open, blinking against the brilliance. He was in a medical bay of some kind, all gleaming metal and stark white surfaces, but not one he recognized, not the Retribution's. A shadow fell across him, and Dennis found himself staring up into an alien face. Chitinous armor, mandibles, compound eyes that glittered like polished onyx. Realization crashed into him like a physical blow. Ventaxians. He was on a Ventaxian ship. The war flashed through his mind, a strobe-lit nightmare of blood and fire. Linux's mocking laughter, Max's final agonized whimper, the Retribution, shattered and burning. Dennis tried to surge upright to fight, but his body betrayed him. Agony lanced through him at the slightest movement, drawing a strangled gasp from his throat. The Ventaxian above him raised a placating hand, speaking in sibilant, hissing tones. "Peace, human, you are safe. The war is over." Over. The word echoed in Dennis's mind, as foreign and incomprehensible as the alien language swirling around him. The war had been his entire existence, the crucible in which he had been forged. And now... He shook his head, trying to clear the fog from his thoughts. Where am I? What happened? "You are aboard a Ventaxian patrol ship. We detected your escape pod's distress beacon and brought you aboard. The alien's faceplates shifted in what might have been a sympathetic expression. As for what happened, the battle is ended, human. Your ship destroyed, as was Commander Linux's. Both of your leaders are dead. The war is over. Dead. The word tolled through Dennis like a funeral bell, dredging up images he had tried so hard to forget. Max, torn and lifeless in his arms, the Retribution, consumed by fire, and now Earth's greatest hero, lost as well. Grief and rage welled up in equal measure, so intense they stole his breath. He wanted to scream, to lash out, to make the universe feel some shred of the agony that clawed at his heart. But all that came out was a single word, thin and broken. Why? Why did we save you? The Ventaxian seemed to ponder the question. Your pod was damaged, your life support failing. You would have died. Maybe I should have. The words tasted like ash on Dennis's tongue. Better that than living as a prisoner of war. The alien shook its head. You misunderstand, human. You are not a prisoner. The Ventaxian Empire is no more. Our leadership is in tatters, our fleets shattered. We have no desire to continue this conflict. Rescuing you was a gesture of truce, an end to the cycle of bloodshed between our peoples, if you will have it. Truce. Peace. The words were so alien they might as well have been Ventaxian. All Dennis had ever known was war, against the aliens who had taken everything from him, against the pitiless void that had claimed friend and foe alike, against the snarling beast of vengeance that even now clawed at his heart. But beneath the rage and grief, a tiny ember of something else kindled to life, a fragile, desperate hope, the chance to build something new from the ashes, to honor Max's memory with more than just an endless cycle of violence. The Ventaxian was still speaking, its words washing over Dennis like a distant tide. We will return you to your Earth, along with the remains of your fallen companion. What happens then is up to you and your people, but know that we will not strike first. Not again. Dennis looked away, blinking sudden moisture from his eyes. The pod, the battle, his injuries. It was all too much. He needed time to think, to process, to grieve. But one thing he knew for certain. The war had taken everything from him. His best friend, his ship, his purpose. He would be damned if he let it claim his future as well. The Ventaxian ship hummed around him, carrying him back towards an Earth he scarcely recognized. An Earth without Max, without the Retribution, an Earth where the hated enemy now spoke of peace. It was a strange new world, one that Dennis wasn't sure he was ready to face, but he had no choice for Max, for the Retribution, for all he had lost, and all he might yet gain. He closed his eyes, letting the darkness take him once more, and as he slipped into unconsciousness he could almost feel Max beside him, a comforting warmth guarding him against the cold of space. A memory of home, lost but never forgotten. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.